The Super Speedway Podcast is a Dream Bigger media production. For news, photos, show notes, and information about advertising on the podcast, visit www.thesuperspeedway.com.
3, 2, 1.
Welcome to the Super Speedway.
Welcome to episode 121 of the Super Speedway Podcast, recorded Saturday, August 10th, 2019. I'm your host, Eric Young, and I am without my co-host today, James Cush, as I am at Michigan International Speedway in the Media Center, and I'm joined today by a special guest, the host of the Lap Traffic Podcast, Brandon Croud. How's it going, Brandon?
Good, man. How are you? I don't know about, well, it depends on definitions of special, you know. Thanks,
Well,
man.
I had the orange cone on last year, and he was a special guest, too.
Well, hey, the Cone and I, I've known him a minute, and yeah, for sure.
Yeah, I know he's a frequent guest on your show.
Yes.
So I guess to start out with, Brandon, for people who listen to me and don't listen, now you got a lot more listeners than I do, but that don't know about your show. Tell me about the Lap Traffic Podcast.
Man, it's a hobby that's grown exponentially over the last couple of years. It's unbelievable. Partly due to Michigan International Speedway, we're podcasters, right? And the fact that, they acknowledge what we do as actual media. I don't consider myself a media member. I'd like to say I have media access with some really cool perks. But, it's awesome. I talk everything from, nonsense about my weekends through, I'm a diehard trucks guy. I love the trucks. I put a lot of focus on all three series. I've had drivers from all three series on, weather segments, fantasy segments, listener call-ins. The show's really kind of taken a life of its own, which is really cool, man.
How'd you get started doing it?
Just a random at the bar and was like, I think I could do a podcast. So, just one of those things and put it into motion, man.
That's my buddy and I started ours because we'd ride down to Eldora together and talk for 6 hours on the way to the track. And
Right.
we're like, we should record this.
Yeah,
this would be good.
absolutely.
And somehow
Absolutely.
some people started listening to us for some reason.
Yeah, there you go. There you go.
You mentioned your guests. You've got a ton of great guests. You do that very consistently. Tell me about some of the people you've had on your show.
I tell you, some of the coolest and ones that have become more than just interviews and developed, friendships with, Jeff Striegel, man. That dude is awesome. He was on the show to open MIS weekend last week. He's going to be on Tuesday to close out the show there, which is just awesome. Him and I text each other, so that's really, really cool. Rick Brenner from MIS has been on a handful of times. You mentioned the Orange Cone. Him and I have become friends. NASCAR Chasm's been on a handful of times. PETM Podcast, who I know you've interacted with a little bit. It's just an awesome community to be able to interact and have some fun there. I would say some of the other, Grant Enfinger will pass me in the garage. He knows who I am. And I'm like, are you kidding me? That's one of the coolest things in the world. Like, I was in Victory Lane right now with Austin Hill and standing out there getting pictures and stuff like that. And PR rep gave me a hug, like that's one of the things that's still kind of surreal. Like that's where, real media that they're used to that, it's still fan based, but professionally done, which is really cool.
I get fascinated every time one of the NASCAR people recognizes me or something. Matt Humphrey just called me by name. It's like,
right. Yeah, absolutely.
And then, Brad Keselowski, whenever you talk to him, he uses your name. And when the first time Brad uttered my name, it's like, holy cow.
See, he doesn't even know my name. So you're a step ahead. There we go.
Well, I don't know if he'd remember it now, but he did address me by name. So, where was I going here? I completely lost my train of thought, which is pretty common on this show. How long have you been a NASCAR fan?
I started getting into NASCAR, 18, 19 years old. High school, I started really getting into it. My uncle was always into it. My grandpa worked for GM. He was always coming to the track, used to come every once in a while as a kid, not as, diehard. Once, I really started becoming a fan in my early 20s, started coming out on Sundays and all that kind of stuff. So I'll be honest, I came on and in as a fan after Earnhardt.
Okay.
And that's, everyone, well, you got to pick a driver, and that's how I, as a fan, Kevin Harvick became my driver. Took over for him, smart ass kind of guy, fit my character and personality, a little bit. So, that's how that's all kind of come into shape there.
Does it fascinate you to have followed it and then be on the inside now, kind of. I mean, obviously, we're only here a few weeks.
Yeah,
But
yeah, no, it's unbelievable. Like I said, I never in my wildest dreams would have ever imagined that, I'd be talking to driver. Yeah, it's still. I still am a fanboy when I come here, right? I mean, if we break it down, to be honest, like I homer out, it's crazy being here. So.
In June, I got to ask Jimmy Johnson a few questions.
Me too. Oh my God, yes.
And I was like, why are they letting me do this?
Right. like
somebody's going to come and stop me any
second.
second.
To be here.
Yeah, it's absolutely crazy, but it's an amazing thing. And one thing I was explaining to one of my friends about it, and he's coming down to help with photography tomorrow for the Cup race. And I told him, I said, it's kind of, and see if you feel the same way, it's smaller than you'd imagine. It's closer together, but it's still this huge thing. Like it feels so different once you've been on the inside of it.
Yeah, it's different, because we're in the mix of, while we're doing this as a hobby, we're in the mix of people doing the same thing we're doing,
right,
and getting paid to do it.
Yeah.
So from that regard, it's like you never want to step on anybody's toes. You never want to, you don't want to push the boundaries. You want to let those that are there for a consistent purpose do their thing. But it is, you come back in here and it's like, drivers will walk right past, owners will walk right past you, and it's just like, it's just the thing. It's like The Office, only their office moves each week to a new track.
My first race was the Eldora truck race a couple years ago, and Kenny Wallace is in the media center, and I'm just like, holy cow.
Right, yeah.
I'm in the middle of this stuff,
Yeah,
No, it's
all
crazy.
Right. Yeah.
So Harvick is your guy then?
Yes, Harvick is my guy.
All right.
Yes.
So
I was very happy last August.
Yeah, no kidding.
Well, so real quick,
Yeah.
you can get back. So Kevin Harvick, in my opinion, and this is, I wanted to ask him this because he was doing the press conference in the media center yesterday, but
Right.
I had an interview scheduled, so I wasn't able to come in here for the main one. But I wanted to ask him, he has the win here at August 2010 with Richard Childress. He's got the win here last August with Stuart Haas. In between those, I want to say he has 7 or 8 second place finishes. He almost has more wins at Michigan than he does at Phoenix. And so he's dominated this track, just come up short a couple times. I wonder if he feels like this is almost maybe his second backyard with the way that he's really ran here over the last couple of years, and he's starting on the front row tomorrow. So we'll see what he can do with that.
See, I'm a Kyle Busch fan.
Fair enough.
And so I don't expect anything to happen at Michigan because he hates this place.
Yeah, but he still has 2 wins here? Or
yeah,
one
he's got a couple wins. He's got to win everywhere.
Right, that's right.
Except the Roval.
Yeah.
So you mentioned that you had interviews scheduled yesterday. So tell me about a weekend at the track for you, especially here at Michigan, because I know you do a big deal here at Michigan.
Friday is absolutely insane. So got here a few minutes later than planned, just because I wasn't expecting the traffic,
the rerouting,
rerouting and all that here. So I took a nice detour through the campgrounds and all that yesterday, nickel and diamond my way to the media center parking here in the infield, and literally I pack up the whole shop from the basement, bring it here in this big Rubbermaid tub, and it takes me a good 30-40 minutes to get everything set up and neat and organized for a social media picture of ready to go kind of thing. And it's sometimes it's one right after another, sometimes there's a few spaced out, but yesterday a couple interviews came together yesterday, which was cool and made the day even more full. And even I had some interviews scheduled. I wanted to get the show posted at least by 3:00 yesterday. That way people could at least listen on the way home from work maybe or something. And I had a couple scheduled at 4:30 and 5:15 yesterday. So those are going to be on Tuesday's show. But yeah, so it's a long full day. I hardly see the outside here on Fridays. Like I don't really even get to see much of practice or anything like that.
Yeah, no, I was surprised I saw you yesterday. Yeah, I wasn't expecting it.
It's running back and forth to grab, a water, Gatorade, pop, whatever. And Fridays are a crazy day. Saturday and Sunday, it's just, I got the microphone in the bag just in case something. But yeah, it's production day is on Friday. That's for sure. So
who's been I know you mentioned Jeff Striegel. Who's been your favorite guest so far?
Favorite guest? I would have to say Steve Letarte was really cool. And I'm not just saying that because he randomly popped in yesterday, but I had him on a couple months ago, and he was just the wealth of knowledge and just like he knows where you're coming from with your questions, and he'll just take it, and run with it. It happened yesterday. We were talking about truck playoffs, and on my paper I had 16 too many, and I was alluding to 16 Cup drivers are too many for the playoffs. He beat me to it. He knew exactly where I was going with the question before. He really good to talk to there. From a driver standpoint, I'd have to say probably one of the coolest. Man, might be Ben Rhodes or Grant Enfinger. They're really cool to talk to.
I had my first interaction with Ben Rhodes last year at Kentucky when he won at his home track.
Yeah.
And just completely different than what I expected from him. And he's ever since when he's in a media center or whatever, I try to talk to him because
absolutely.
He's fun to interview.
Well, and speaking of fun, Matt Tift and I have become kind of close. I don't want to say close, but he likes to give me crap for being a Michigan fan, and I have to take it because we haven't been able to beat Ohio State. So I actually saw him in here yesterday and walked up to him, and I was like, "Hey, I'm thinking of doing a college football preview show, like bonus show, no NASCAR. Is that something you might be interested in?" He's like, "Yeah, get a hold of me." So I'll see if we can't set something like that up because that'll be fun because I'm sure that'll be an hour of me just taking a beating. So
that's awesome. Let's talk a little NASCAR because you brought it up with Steve Letarte. Yesterday, a lot of the questions, it's funny because you were in here, so you didn't get to hear a lot of those questions.
No.
But a lot of those questions out there yesterday were about the truck playoffs and the fact that today we had Matt Crafton, who was the second guy on the bubble basically with no wins, second guy with no wins, and he had a chance of falling out if somebody would have won a race. You got Ben Rhodes, who was right there, in the top 8, but didn't make the playoffs. And so there were questions yesterday about whether they should expand the field for the truck series to more than 8. We've talked on our podcast that 16 is a heck of a lot for the Cup series.
Too many.
What do you think?
I think 8's perfect for the truck. I think 12 is pretty good for Xfinity. I think you could get away with doing 12 for Xfinity and Cup. I think you got enough teams for that. From the truck series standpoint, you've got 32 showing up,
right?
But I don't think you've got enough competitive teams to make it worth expanding. I think we've got a little bit of an anomaly this year that we had 4 guys with wins outside of your cut line.
But that's the thing, when you get a guy that starts collecting points halfway through the season and can still make the top 20 to make the playoffs.
Yes.
I mean that tells you that the field's not deep enough to support a bigger field.
So I don't think I think it's awesome. I think the level of excitement the last 5+ weeks, because this is not something that just happened last week. This thing has shaped itself over the last few weeks. And I think it's made for awesome racing, awesome TV, a reason to talk about the trucks, a reason to watch the trucks. It's been exciting finishes. Today was this was basically a playoff race because you had it wasn't a set field coming into this race. Right. You had a playoff field coming into it. We had a playoff
4 guys
finish.
running that weren't running for the lead at one point.
Absolutely.
Of course, it ended up being a guy that was already in that got the win. But still.
And then that's the thing. Tyler Ankrum almost got a second win there. Like, kidding me? Like, I get where he won the fuel mileage race, and you could say it was a backed-in win. He still won nonetheless. I mean, if he would have won this thing today, he'd have earned that damn thing, So, but restarts, guys needing wins. Crafton gave a little aggressive push there, got him loose, couldn't keep it controlled. Ben Rhodes, same thing with him. He, hit the wall a little bit, took the 4 with him. They dropped back, and that was the end of his day. Mm-hmm. Chastain, fortunately, he's got his wins and was a lock. So, nothing really lost other than the potential of maybe getting a few extra points from there. It was this day unfolded early with the Ross Chastain issue starting pretty early. And then, just kind of going through. We talked before we started recording here, started off a little slow. Mm-hmm. But once we got towards the end of stage 2, this thing really picked up.
Yeah, this race is already, the trucks are good everywhere.
Yep.
The trucks are great at Michigan.
Yep.
And then you add that playoff excitement to it, and it just was above and beyond.
Yeah, I'm really glad that this track is the season finale here. I don't know if that changed for next year. I don't know. But
I was excited to see it was a cutoff race. That was
absolutely.
pretty cool. So
yeah.
The Cup Series, obviously in a big transition right now. We've got a new aero package, which has been the topic of our podcast probably every week and how we think it's going. You've got some of the younger drivers starting to finally make a name for themselves, other ones that haven't quite yet. You've got some of the veterans that are either have just recently retired, are potentially retiring. There's talk of some of them, we don't know what Kurt Busch is doing next year yet. Denny Hamlin's been a big question mark, except for the fact that it's probably his best he's ever run for a championship this year. What do you think of where the Cup Series is right now?
If we talk from the aero side of things, that spoiler's too big. They got to do something with that. And I'm sure you've hashed all these things out. So, they got to do something. You shouldn't need to have to put traction compound down everywhere you go. I get it here at a place like Michigan. This track surface is 7, 8 years old, something like that. And it hasn't really worn out at all.
I wish they could pave the roads in Michigan with the same stuff.
Right? Yeah, no kidding. That's right. So from that regard, I think there are certain tracks where it makes sense to put it down. I think they put it up too high.
Yeah.
I think they got to, bring that down.
I'll be curious if they bring it down a little bit tonight.
If they bring it down, then because then you'll have the stuff that's already up there a little bit.
Right.
And then you'll have, that middle lane.
A couple of the trucks were up there. I saw Kyle Busch in Happy Hour was running right side tires in it in 1 and 2.
Okay.
So they might slip up there tomorrow. If it stays. I don't think so.
I don't think so. If we talk playoffs and all that, Jimmy Johnson, I mentioned it yesterday on my show. I cannot believe he has not gotten a win since June 2017.
We just talked about it last week that he had a helmet painted for his next win and wore it 1 week and won again. He was just on a roll and then just bam, done.
Nothing. Yep. See ya. You look at Clint Boyer, Stuart Haas, I think the 4 team's starting to get a little bit better handle of things. The 14 team, I think they've just had a string of bad luck. They've had issues on the track. They've got, they've had things not go their way, not necessarily from an on-track and fast car perspective. That's kind of played a bummer there. Suarez is in his first full year, but you look at where they were last year. It was Eric Almirola's first time in the 10 car last year, and all 4 guys got a win. Granted, it was, Kurt Busch, and he has a win this year just with Chip Ganassi.
Right.
I think that team needs to pull it together somehow. They need, and it's not that they're not there. I think they're still working on the speed a little bit, but I think they need a couple good things to go their way. Otherwise, they could be looking at potentially maybe just one Stuart Haas car making the playoffs when all 4 made it last year. Jimmy Johnson, Ryan Newman, it's Ryan Newman will probably get in just because he's been it's Newman. It's been consistent as hell lately. But then I look and I see a bunch of other guys like Chris Buescher, who is having an awesome year for his team and the capabilities that I think that team has. They're running top 15s pretty consistently, which is cool. You look at Matt DiBenedetto, who's had 4 top 10s in the last 7 races. I'm really curious to see what they're able to do tomorrow. He's done it at road courses. He's done it at a mile. Can that team get something on a big 2-mile, speedway like Michigan? Right. And if they can, then I think that's an amazing improvement that team has done from the first half of their season till now. And then you got your guys in the middle. You've got your not even Kyle Larson. You would he's not in the middle. You got Kurt Busch. He's got your 1 win. Kevin Harvick, while he's up there in points, when things get reseeded, he's not going to be up towards the top unless he can pull off another one. I think things are going to heat up a little, not to the degree that we've had with the Truck Series over the last couple of weeks, but that boils down to the fact that we've got 16 guys that are going to make it. So,
although we had a bunch of people wanting to fight each other last week.
Right. Well, that's true. That's true.
Jimmy Johnson and Ryan Blaney still hate each other.
Mm-hmm.
Kyle still isn't getting along with his former drivers.
Yeah. Yeah.
So it's been definitely a really interesting season so far. Who do you like for the championship?
For the it's hard. Hard not to pick Kyle Busch.
Yeah.
Dude's just he is. When I think drivers, they'll tell media people, I feel confident that this team can win at any track, whenever we show up. And I think some feel that way. I think some feel they have to say that. And then there are a very few handful of guys that is the legit truth. Mm-hmm. And Kyle Busch is one of those. I don't care where you show up. That dude could have a tore up car and be 2 laps down. And next thing you know, there's 25 to go and he's up in the top 10.
Yeah.
That there is no quit in him at all. And so right now, I don't see how he isn't the favorite.
He's doing that stuff that Jimmy Johnson used to do, where you take a bad day and it's still a good day. Although when he implodes, he implodes.
He implodes. Yep.
Definitely. What's the favorite track you've been to?
Favorite track I've been to, I would have to say Atlanta.
Okay.
Just because it's got so much history. We've seen such amazing races there over the last couple of years. Being able to stand on that track and actually see what everyone talks about, you don't. The TV doesn't do that track, the surface and how it looks justice. You know, standing there on it in person, that was really, really cool.
Awesome.
Yes.
What's a track you haven't been to that's like on your bucket list that you got to get to?
Martinsville. I was almost close to pulling the trigger to going this year. It would have been a solo trip, which, you'd want to have some people going to Martinsville. And next year, it's going to be under the lights, short track racing at Martinsville. I mean, that just sounds like a good time. So I'm really going to try to make Martinsville next year work for me. How about you?
Bristol for me.
Yeah, it's Bristol, Martinsville.
Yeah,
I got to get to both of those. It's got to happen.
It's not the old Bristol, but it's still Bristol.
Absolutely.
And to get a chance to go there. I don't know. Talladega for some reason is on my list. Although I don't know that I'm not a big fan of going to the big tracks because I like to see the whole track.
Sure.
And with them being that big, it's tough. But Talladega is on my list too.
Sure.
I've always loved that place.
Yeah.
I love restricted. Well, it's not restricted plate racing anymore, but I love that style of racing. Which is why I liked this package when they introduced it. It hasn't. I've gone back and forth week after week as to whether I like it, don't like it, whatever.
Sure.
But what's a track to you that's not in the Cup Series that you'd like to see in the Cup Series?
Ooh, that's a good one. Like hypothetical. I think ones that really could. I think Mid Ohio. That's produced some really good Xfinity races. I'm all about giving fans what they want,
right?
To as long as it's feasible, and especially now that NASCAR is going to have a little bit more control of the schedule, they don't have to keep things the same.
Right.
So right now the fascination is road courses. Mm-hmm. So give us road courses for a couple of years. Let that die, and. So if NASCAR gets that ability, and I give us road courses, we love them, so give them to us, and I get that it's a lot more complicated than I'm so oversimplifying that process right there. But I'm just saying, the trucks and the Xfinity Series go to a couple more, Canadian. That would be cool. Take it north.
Can you imagine a playoff cutoff race with that turn?
No, that's right. That's what I'm saying.
Last turn in the Cup Series.
A lot of Canadians come, over to the Michigan race, mm-hmm. right? Like you can go out in the parking lot, and you will see a lot of Ontario plates.
Yeah.
If they were to go and put a race out there, I think people would show up for something like that, especially because they haven't been there with a Cup Series race. I think that'd be quite the show.
I'd like to see NASCAR go back to Montreal too. I like Montreal.
Sure.
I like Mexico when they raced down there. Actually, I liked it until they took away the dogleg on the front stretch.
Okay.
I thought the dogleg on the front stretch was interesting. I'd like to see Iowa. Obviously, strikes me as one. I feel like Iowa wouldn't be as good as everybody thinks it's going to be, though.
Yeah, I don't know. Everyone talks about attendance and stuff like that.
Yeah.
And, no one really shows up to Iowa, and that plays a role. I don't know what kind of race that would produce from a Cup Series perspective. I think that might be one of the ones that could get it the quickest.
Yeah.
But that again is if they even want to go there.
Right.
So
I like Gateway. I think there's a lot of excitement around Gateway with the local fans and stuff there. And that track, for a flat track that normally doesn't produce good racing in stock cars for some reason, just always produces a great race.
Yeah. Yep.
So I'd like to see something there too. That'd be kind of cool. What are your thoughts on dirt in Cup?
I like it in truck.
Yeah.
I don't know. So, coming as a wrestling fan, like, I understand gimmick matches, your cage matches, your Hell in a Cell matches, and the right storyline, then you need that gimmick to either finish. It makes sense occasionally. You throw in too many cage matches, then it just becomes an everyday thing. Too many ladder, whatever. Plate racing, or tapered spacer racing, whatever you want to call it. To me, that is it's if I were to use an analogy, that's what I would use. It's a gimmick race from that regard. And I think dirt, that adds a gimmick feature to it. Not that that's bad. I love Eldora. It's one of my favorite races, but it's because it's once a year. It's a special place in Eldora that has history. Tony Stewart saved the track.
Right.
There's just it's a story behind it, right?
See, I felt like Eldora felt like a gimmick until we ran the first race there,
and then
it worked.
Yes,
and it made sense, and it didn't. And maybe I don't disagree with you that it very well will feel like that in the Cup Series.
Yeah,
and it might not work out in the Cup Series.
I don't know. All right, let's go this way. I like what they've done and tested and messed around with, like the All-Star race or something like that. If we wanted to do it on a non-points paying race and kind of see how it goes,
Right.
But my thing is, I don't know what kind of a track would be big enough to handle.
Yeah.
Is there a dirt track out there I don't think you could run Cup at Eldora. Obviously just, you don't have a pit road, there are some facets there.
Well,
and
it's
even
also in the middle of nowhere.
Well, it's in the middle of nowhere.
You need hotels for people.
Right, yeah, exactly.
There's not
right?
a hotel within an hour for that place for the most part.
It's half mile. We run at a half mile, but a half mile at Bristol and a half mile on dirt, two different.
Yeah. I feel like there's so much that they would have to change at Eldora, which would take the luster of Eldora away.
Exactly.
That
And
would
you don't
hurt
wanna change
Eldora.
that. Yep.
So yeah, it'd be interesting though.
Yep.
Yeah, we've put dirt on Bristol before.
That's true. That's true.
Anything else that I should know that my listeners should know about you?
Oh man, my wife would like me to go and finish my PhD and stop doing so much podcasting.
Yeah, what do you do for your day job? What do you do during the day?
So my day job is so boring, so boring. I work at a mortgage company, and I've actually been in the mortgage industry since 2001. And right now, I am on the credit side of things, so I help and review and make credit decisions. I do some underwriting, just because the companies need some underwriting help right now, but I will analyze and review some of the more tougher situations and loans to see if we can make sense of it to meet, FHA, Fannie Mae, Freddie Mac, VA guidelines and all that kind of stuff. So real exciting stuff.
Sounds great.
Yeah, it is. But the nice thing is I get to work from home 3 days a week. So that's always helpful when you don't have to go schlep into the office every day. So,
there you go.
Yes.
Any more races you're going to this year?
I am really going to try. I'm going to say I'm 75 to 80% going to be going to Richmond next month, September. My wife has some friends that are there. My wife's not going to be able to go, but they've offered a place to stay.
Nice.
It's I think it's only like 18,000 Delta miles to fly out there, but that's actually going up a little bit. So I need to either book this flight now next week or it's going to cost me a lot more. So probably going to be going to Richmond.
Awesome. So. That one's on my list too.
Yeah.
For sure.
Yes.
Where can people find you? Where can they find the podcast? Where can they find you on social media?
TheLapTrafficPodcast.com. Check out, I've got an intern. He's putting some pieces, turn 4 with intern Teddy on the website, which is really cool. Always real active on Twitter, @LapTrafficPC. I do a ton of giveaways and stuff like that. I'm very close to 4,000 followers and have a giveaway going on there. So if you're not following, go follow and tell your friends. Instagram, the Lap Traffic Podcast. It's pretty common, I tried to get it as many close to the same thing as possible,
Nice.
So,
once a week, you do a bunch of bonus stuff too, don't you?
It's typically once a week. I've fortunately had a lot of extra content over the last couple weeks. I actually did 8 shows in 4 weeks, but now that MIS is over, it'll be, for the most part, probably 1 show a week the rest of the season, unless something, really cool comes along or I decide to do another listener call-in show or something like that. But, for the most part, rest of the year it'll probably be Tuesday nights. You can get it on iTunes, Podbean, or wherever you listen.
Awesome. Great. Meanwhile, you can find me on Twitter at TSuperspeedway. You can find our podcast on Facebook.com/TheSuperspeedway. Our website is TheSuperspeedway.com. You can find the podcast there, all kinds of different coverage. The podcast is on iTunes, Google Play, and SoundCloud. And I'm at the track this weekend at Michigan International Speedway. You can find coverage from this weekend at TheSuperspeedway.com. I'll be back later in the week with a post-race podcast. I don't know quite how that's going to look yet because James is off this week, but I'll figure it out. Follow my Twitter account for updates during Sunday's race at MIS. And for now, everybody, let's go racing.
See ya.